Today I want to talk about one of the greatest human problems that on a conventional understanding of it, it is completely insoluble. There is no solution to it, and that is life is short. But life is much shorter than you think. You know, there's an amazing book that came out in recent years called 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. And this is how he starts the book. The average human lifespan is absurdly, terrifyingly, insultingly short. And then he goes on to say, how long is it? So he says, assuming you live to be 80, you'll have had about 4,000 weeks. Certainly you might get lucky, make it to 90, and you'll have had almost 4,700 weeks. But the average person living to the age of 80 will get about 4,000 weeks, and that is it. The real problem is that there's no way around that, because all of the modern technologies, you can't get time back. It marches on, and the human life is finite. Now, what do we do with that problem? What Burkeman discusses in the book is that time management theories try to work out what is the most efficient way of using the time. But even if you get super efficient, you can cram a few more things into your 4,000 weeks, but it's just on the margins of it, because you can't really do exponentially much more. That's just what you've got. Please God, you can have up to 120 years, but whatever it is, there is a finite amount of time for the human being. And how do we deal with that problem? Now, in this week's Parsha, we have a bit of a discussion about one particular reaction to it. We have the famous interaction between Yaakov and Esav, Jacob and Esau, when Esau comes in from the field in Parshat Toldot, this week's Parsha, and he is exhausted, and Yaakov is cooking a pot of lentils, and Esav wants it. And then Yaakov says to him, Michrach hayom et bechorat chali, sell me the birthright. If you want the pot of lentils, sell me the birthright. And then Esav says the words which I think encapsulate what we are dealing with. Vayomer Esav says, Hinei anochi holech lamut, velama ze li bechora. I'm going to die. What do I need this birthright for? That is in essence the whole debate. And because of that, he sells it, because he says, well, what am I losing? So the birthright. But I'm only, I'm here today and gone tomorrow. And then it says about Esav that Vayochal, Vayesht, Vayakum, Vayelech. He ate, he drank, he got up, and he went. And in that debate where Jacob buys the right of the birthright to be the firstborn and to continue the legacy of Abraham, and Esau sells it for a pot of soup, you have here the essence of it. Because the one reaction to the fact that life is short is to say, well, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Which makes a lot of sense, because there's a limit. There's no much more that you can get out of life. You're stuck with a certain amount. So you may as well seize the day today. Of course, it's not as crude and as simplistic as that, because even if you're going to go with the theory of let us get the most out of life's enjoyments, get all the pleasures you can out of life, even if that's going to be your theory, well, you can't really live like Esau was saying, give it to me today and I don't have to worry about tomorrow. There is some sort of long-termism, if one can use such a word, that is needed even if one's going to take on this very simplistic, narrow view of life, which is to say you want to get the most out of it, because you still need to look in the long term, because what are the consequences of what happens, like the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, in chapter 2, Mishnah 13, that one of the opinions says that one of the most important qualities a person needs is roe et hanolad, to see what is born. You need to see what is going to happen. So you can, eat today, but then live with the health consequences tomorrow. A person can act impulsively today, which may then have implications for his business, marriage, children tomorrow. So even if a person is going to take the view, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, no one takes it on such a simplistic basis, or let's put it this way, no one responsible will do it on such a simplistic basis. But nevertheless, it is built on the theory is that we've got these 4,000 weeks. How can we make the most of the 4,000 weeks? And this is what Burkeman goes into, which is so fascinating, because people are constantly trying to make the most of the 4,000 weeks. So he refers here at the beginning of the book, in his introduction, to a famous speech that was delivered in 1930 by famous economist John Keynes, who said this. He made a famous prediction. He said that within a century, thanks to the growth of the economy and technology, his prediction was no one would work more than about 15 hours a week. And then the challenge would be how to fill all the newfound leisure time without going crazy. For the first time since his creation, this is what Keynes said, man will be faced with his permanent problem, how to use his freedom from pressing economic cares. And every generation thinks, now they're saying that about AI, that eventually no one's going to have anything to do because the technology will do everything for you. But what happens is, and Burke discusses this, with a theory in time management where a person wants to get to zero in the email inbox, because what happens is the more efficient you get, actually the more other things clutter your life. So you can't get there. And no matter what you're trying to squeeze out of life, ultimately all you do is end up being more efficient. But the 4,000 weeks are a given and you can't get around it. You're stuck within that, and you can get a bit more efficient inside of it, but it doesn't actually change the parameters. The only way to change the parameters is part of what Jacob said to Esau, sell me your birthright, because what's going on there? What was his side of the equation? And the real way to understand that is another Mishnah in Pirkei Avot here in chapter 4, Mishnah 21. And it explains, it says this, and this changes the whole equation, and this is the way out of the 4,000 weeks. Mishnah says, chapter 4, Mishnah 21, Rabbi Yaakov Omer, Ha'olam hazeh domeh leprosdor bifnei olam haba. This is not the only world. This world is like a corridor and an entrance hall into the next world. Hatkein atzmecha beprosdor kedei shetikanis letraklin. Prepare yourself, work on yourself in this entrance hall, into this corridor, so that you can enter the palace of the king. And so, in essence, what happens with this is that all of a sudden, this world, which we thought is we stuck with our 4,000 weeks, and that's all that we have, is actually just the beginning of existence. It's not the end of it. It's actually just the corridor. It's the entrance hall into the main event, which is the palace of the king, which is Olam Haba, the world to come. And all of a sudden then, and even if you look in that word, the world to come, all of a sudden, what we're dealing with then is that there is a way out of the 4,000 weeks. And it's called Olam Haba, it's called the next world. But the way to get there is through this world. The way to get there is through this world. Because here's the interesting thing. It says there, prepare yourself so that you can enter into the palace. And the only way to prepare yourself so you can enter into the palace is doing what you're meant to be doing in this world, which is working on yourself through acquiring the wisdom of the Torah, doing the actions, the mitzvahs that God requires of us. And then actually you have a way into the next world, because then you gain the right of access into the next world. In other words, the 4,000 weeks that we have in this world is actually the way to access eternity. Because Olam Hazeh, this world, is very fixed. You can't get around the parameters. Please God, we make it to 120. But there is a limit to where a person can go. The next world is eternity. But the way you access eternity is through this world. And how do you access it through this world? By doing what God put us on this earth to do. Preparing ourselves, working on ourselves, learning His wisdom, doing His mitzvahs. Then we prepare ourselves for eternity. And by doing that, we use this world for what it was intended to be. And then we then start to understand the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that says in chapter 1, Mishnah 14, probably the most famous of all the Mishnahs in Pirkei Avot. If you would ask a person, what do they know about Pirkei Avot? They would say this one, if not now, when? Im lo achshav eimatai. But actually what that means is, according to Rashi and Rabbeinu Bechai, you know what that means? If I don't do it in this world, I won't be able to do it in the next world. Because only in this world I can do mitzvahs. I can't do it in the next world, which is also Avot chapter 4, Mishnah 22, which says that one moment of repentance and good deeds in this world is worth an entire lifetime in the world to come. Can't do it there. Rashi compares it to Erev Shabbos and Shabbos. On Shabbos you can't work. There's nothing to be done. And the point is this, he said, if you didn't cook the food on Erev Shabbos, then on Shabbos you're going to go hungry, because you can't actually do the work on Shabbos. Shabbos is called Ma'ain Olam Haba. It's called a taste of the world to come. Because on Shabbos, we just are, we be, we exist, we don't do. And what you didn't prepare on before Shabbos, then Shabbos is going to be without it. So what we don't prepare in our work in this world, we can't get in the next world. So the only way to access the next world is through the good deeds that we do in this world. But if we do that, if we get that right, if we do that and we get that right, then we can buy ourselves eternity. We escape the trap of the 4,000 weeks. But then we've got to be super focused. And then if we're talking then about a Torah time management philosophy, that will say the core of that time management is one word: priority. You have to choose the most important thing to do. Like the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, Asay Torat Chakeva, make your Torah fixed, meaning get right what is the most important thing. Everything else serves. The good deeds that we do, the Torah that we learn, a person has to earn a living in order to give charity, in order to support a family, in order to build a community. These are all the means to the end. We have to know in terms of priority. And because time is so limited, we therefore have to get it right. Like the Mishnah also says in chapter 2, Mishnah 20, Hayom katsar v'hamalacha merubah. The day is short and there's a lot to do, which means that it's true, we actually are stuck with this dilemma. We're stuck with the dilemma of how do you fit more into the 4,000 weeks? But actually, Burkeman comes to the conclusion, because he's only dealing with the parameters of the 4,000 weeks, and he has a kind of Zen philosophy about the engagement with all of these things. He comes to the conclusion in the introduction to the book. He basically says, look, this is a book about time management, but it's built on the fundamental assumption that time management is actually impossible, and that therefore he says as follows: let's start by admitting defeat. Okay? By defeat, you cannot actually rearrange it. And that is a fundamental thing. And then the whole book is about how do you accept the fact there's no way out of the 4,000 weeks, and this is all you've got. How do you live in peace with that? Once you accept mortality, then what do you do with it? But the Torah way is to say, actually, there is a way out of the 4,000 weeks. It's into Olam Haba, which is eternity. But in order to get there, you have to use the time here really well, because the day is short and there's a lot of work to be done. There are a lot of mitzvahs to do. There are a lot of people to help. There's a lot of wisdom to learn. There is so much to do. There are families to be raised, communities to be built, Hashem's name to be sanctified, mitzvahs to do. There's tons to do. So therefore, we better get our time management exactly right, which starts with doing the most important thing. It's a point that, an interesting insight that I learned from my wife. She said this, especially in today's modern age: you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything. You can have anything, but you can't have everything, because there is just a limited amount of resource, time, money, opportunities, so you have to choose. And when you're choosing one thing, you're not having another thing. And so then the most important part of time management is to actually get it right. How am I using my time? Because time, as the Chofetz Chaim famously said, time is not money. Time is much more valuable than money. Time is life, because life is just the time that we have, and it is non-renewable. Money and any other property is a renewable resource. Time is not a renewable resource, and therefore we have to be very careful about how we spend it, because when we are using it for one thing, we're not using it for another. And so the heart of Torah time management is to say, use the time that we have in this world and get it right, because we've only got a limited amount of time here, and whatever we do here is going to be our entrance into real eternity. And so the way out of the 4,000 weeks is into Olam Haba, into the world of eternity, into the real future world, and therefore time management actually makes sense, which is, if not now, when? Meaning we have to work with urgency, but more importantly, we have to work with moral clarity, know what is important, and make sure we are spending our time on the most important and precious things that we can. But part of it is then, at the end of the day, is also to approach it all with humility. Because you see, the Mishnah here, chapter 2, Mishnah 20 says, Hayom katzar v'hamalacha merubah. The day is short and the work is great. But the next one says, Lo alecha melacha ligmor. The work is not for you to finish. Which means this: even with this approach, we have to accept we are limited human beings. And we're dealing with those 4,000 weeks, and there's no way out of those except into eternity. But the time that we have here is limited, and we have limited resource and energy. In fact, when Adam was created, according to the Midrash, the angels thought he was so great, Adam and Eve were so great, they thought they were like God himself. And then they saw them fall asleep. And the source of human being, you actually need to sleep. We spend half our time here, okay, a third of it, maybe a bit less, sleeping. Because we're so limited, we can't actually function without sleep. And we're so limited, we can't actually function without a glass of water. And as human beings, we are so limited because we can't make more time than is allocated to us. And that brings with it humility. Lo alecha melech. You don't have to finish it. You will never finish. We will never finish the work because the human being is so limited. As the verse in the book of Job says, Kitzel Yameinu. Our days are like a shadow. And in the book of Psalms, it says that our days are like a passing shadow. You thought that it was Shakespeare who said that first. It was King David in the book of Psalms. Quite certain that William Shakespeare took it out of the book of Psalms. Life is but a passing shadow, a walking shadow. That is all that it is. We just come in and we come out, and there's a limit to what we can get done here in this world because our time, hayom katzar, the day is short. We haven't made the time here longer. We've just made it more valuable. In Burkeman's philosophy, in a secularist philosophy that this world is everything that it is, you have to sort of accept the pathetic nature of the human condition and make peace with it and have acceptance of it. And that's his whole book. He's actually counseling you how to make peace with the intrinsic tragedy of the human condition. Judaism says the human condition is not tragic. It is heroic. It has tremendous possibilities. It gives us access to eternity. But we are limited. We are not God. We only have for a certain amount of time. We have to use that time well. And we are deeply limited as we learn from one of the greatest, our greatest leader ever, Lo kam k'Moshe, or there was no prophet who arose like Moses. And you know, how does the Torah end? The amazing thing is this. The Torah ends, what was the plan? The plan was God said to Moses, I'm appointing you as the leader. I need you to lead the Jewish people out of Egypt. Lead them, give them the Torah. You're going to be the way that they're going to receive the Torah in this world. And then I want you to lead the people into the land of Israel, into the promised land. And how does it end? The book of Deuteronomy, the book of Devarim ends. Moses dies and he doesn't make it into the promised land. He doesn't finish the job. He doesn't, the greatest Jew ever, Lo kam k'Moshe, there was no one who arose like Moses ever in the history and will ever, and he couldn't finish his work. It would have been such a beautiful fairy tale ending if it would have he would have been the one to march into the promised land and lead the Jewish people in. The only thing is the Torah is not a fairy tale, it's true life. And therefore it doesn't have a fairy tale ending. And Moses dies before he finishes the job to teach us this fundamental lesson. You never finish. You can never finish because we are limited. And as Rav Eliyahu Dessler writes, and it's a quote that has stuck in my mind since I read it many years ago, he says this, we are born in the middle of things and we die in the middle of things. Life is not neat. There's no way that we can control it. There's no way that we can contain it. God gives us this time on earth. It is precious. Time is the most precious thing that we have. Every moment, every second, every interaction is an opportunity to gain eternity. And therefore we use it preciously. That is why Bittelsmand, wasting time, is regarded to be one of the most serious of all sins because we are taking our most precious commodity and throwing it away. And when we understand that, the preciousness of it, understand what it is to be a limited human being, then we can make peace with the human condition. And more than that, we can celebrate the heroic, redemptive opportunities of what it is to be a human being living in a temporal world, but with a gateway to eternity.